Oh.
We still have to figure out when we're gonna have that meeting. We don't have a room big enough at the moment.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, okay.
Microphones are on.
Microphones.
Information on. We're live. It's 5 o'clock. Is everybody ready? I'm seeing nothing but thumbs up. So, okay, so let's get this kicked off. I would like to call this meeting to order. This is our monthly meeting of the El Dorado Hills Community Council, and it is Monday, November the 1st, 2021. Welcome to November already. I don't know where October went. I blinked my eyes and it was gone. And Halloween was yesterday and relatively uneventful. And so here we are in November. So with that, I would like to ask each of the leadership team members to kind of just acknowledge their name and what particular role they play with our community council. So let's start with Mr. Vania over here. We'll go around the table.
Yeah, John Vania, District 1.
Michael Lilienthal, I chair the Public Safety Committee.
Cindy Munt, Supervisor Heidel's assistant, and I do community information and outreach.
Untitled District 1 Supervisor, year 5 of an 8-year run. So
Glenn Krakow. I represent District 1 and the Community and Economic Development Advisory.
John Davey, I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee, and we're a voluntary group of residents that reviews proposed development in El Dorado Hills and provides feedback to the planning process.
I'm Richard Ross. Good governance is the title that goes with my chair, and it's kind of a government wonk kind of thing. Not woke, wonk,
wonk.
wonk thing. So,
Okay. And so we also like to recognize anyone who is on a commission or committee who's volunteered to serve District 1. So Tita? Thank you. Not seeing anybody. Are you seeing anybody in the attendees list, Cindy?
Oh,
I haven't gotten there yet. Is there anybody there?
no.
Okay. So we will go ahead and move forward from that. And I would like to recognize we have one of our newly appointed planning commissioners in the room, Andy Nevis. Yep. And so Andy represents District 4, District 4, recent appointment. And so I know John has already had discussions with Andy, but welcome, Andy, and you're welcome to the conversation. Thanks for attending.
Alan.
Yes, and Alan, would you please help us identify yourself and what role you play in serving on a committee or commission?
Hi, everybody. Excuse my mask. I'm Alan Stansberry. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission for this district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to adoption of the agenda. Does anybody on the leadership team have any requests relative to the agenda? Rotation, shifts, anything? Not seeing any. We'll accept the agenda as adopted as presented. So we move on to item 3, public comment. This is the portion of the meeting we would invite anyone either present in the fire station meeting room here or on Zoom who would have a question to any member of our leadership council that is not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so at this time. And I think we encourage you to use the microphone up here if you're present in the boardroom so we can hear you better for recording purposes. But we'll open it up first of all. Is there anyone in the conference room, not boardroom, but conference room who would like to speak to anything that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, do we have anyone in our Zoom files?
I do not see any hands raised.
All right, very good. So we'll move beyond that and we'll move right into guest speaker. And so I didn't get to verify Rob is on. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's on.
So we have invited Rob Peters, who's part of our El Dorado County Planning Department. He's the Deputy Director of Planning, to describe the pros and cons of a planned development, otherwise called a PD. A lot of the public doesn't understand what a PD is. They seem to think it's a way only for project proponents to densify their project. But there's more than one side of that. It does create in perpetuity open space that would not otherwise exist without a PD. So it's got pluses and minuses. That doesn't seem to be well understood by a lot of the residents. So we wanted to share with them or have Rob share with them his perspective on it. And I think he's got some PowerPoint slides, and then we'll entertain questions and answers. So with that, Rob, do you want to kind of do a self-introduction? I can't remember how long you've been with the county, but several years now. So
Yes, thank you. Rob Peters, Deputy Director. Can you hear me okay?
you're coming through great. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I have been with the county for approximately 8. Spent most of my time in the planning department, with an exception of a couple of years with being a senior planner in the Department of Transportation. And so I am currently the Deputy Director of Planning within the Planning and Building Department. And my staff oversees the long-range planning, current planning, and permit center staff planning staff. So here to speak to you about plan developments. I'm going to go ahead and try to do a quick screen share, so bear with me here. Let's see. So can you see that in your boardroom there? It seems like you can.
Yeah, it's projecting on the wall quite well. So yep, we're ready.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so this is a quick overview of the plan development process within the planning department of the county. So just going to start with sort of the plan development definitions. And this comes from the general plan document, land under unified control to be planned and developed as a whole in single development operation or a definitely programmed series of development operations or phases. So it's the entirety of the project. It can be all at once or it can be in phases, includes principal and accessory structures and uses substantially related to the character and purposes of the plan development. It's built according to both the general and detailed plans for streets, utilities, lots, and site plans for buildings intended to be located, constructed, used, and related to each other. So the theme here is that the character and the purposes and the uses shall all be, intertwined. It includes a program for the provisions, operations, and maintenances of such these areas, facilities, and improvements, as areas will be for common use by some or all of the occupants of the plan development district. So starting at the highest level here, we're going to start with the general plan and sort of work down to zoning, and then some of the considerations for a plan development type of a project. So in the intro, the planning strategy, it talks about the plan development process, and it also talks about, bear with me here. So it recognizes the plan developments are an effective planning tool to maximize community identity and minimize impacts on surrounding areas, and it encourages growth to reflect the character and scale of the community in which it occurs. So next slide here. Oh, I'm having trouble with my slides here. Bear with me. Can you still see my slideshow?
Yeah, but it got real small. It's not in the presentation mode.
Okay, excuse me for 1 minute here. I'm going to stop sharing and start over here. Apologize for that. My Zoom will not go into full screen here.
Huh. Do you have it, Cindy? Did he send it to you?
I don't have it now.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry for that. I'm not sure what happened to my Zoom here, so bear with me. Well, I can continue to talk about it without the presentation if need be, but it is not allowing me to, having a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I apologize.
Let's see if you can get it restored. So if you need to sign out, sign back in or something, that whatever.
Yeah, can I do that real quick and I'll CC
Yeah,
it? I'll send it to Cindy as well. I apologize for the delay here.
Yeah, no problem. Sometimes we have the gremlins get over and involved with it and they take over. So yeah. We got the Davy Group logo up there big time.
Wow. The Davy Group logo. That's
Looks
what
like
it is.
Harley Davy.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah.
You might be getting a call.
If you, if the honest truth, that's the logo from Night Ranger.
Oh, okay.
My friends are in Night Ranger, but they sent me that. So, there you go.
Okay. Looks like we lost Rob altogether, huh? So he's signed out. There we go. He's coming back. Okay.
I am back. Can you see me now?
Yeah, we can see you. We can't see the slides yet, but we can see you.
Okay,
Yeah.
apologize for that. Yep, I'm going to share the screen right now. I didn't
All
want
right.
to interrupt something.
It's there. It's just not presentation mode. It's the real small.
There we go.
There you go. All right. Good.
I think I'm back.
Yes, you are.
So,
We're there.
I apologize everyone for that. Definitely apologize for the delay and wasting your time in that. Okay, so the intro includes the planning strategy as the plan development as I identified earlier. So moving on. So to the objectives of 22.3, which is the plan development. It includes within it several general plan policies related to plan developments as a whole. So these are have their own objectives and policies within the general plan. They speak to, I have some high level sort of categories here, but the combining zone. So one of the things is that you will have to, the general plan implements a plan development combining zone that can be applied to a piece of parcel or a piece of land or a parcel so that the plan development permit or development permit can be obtained. If it's not on the parcel, when a discretionary application comes through, it has to be added through a rezone. It speaks to the development density under policy 2232. And so that includes the development as envisioned by the general plan, but also speaks to some of the additional densities that are allowed under a plan development discretionary application. Again, policy 2233 speaks to rezones. And what that means is that if you bring forward a rezone along with a plan development, the rezones still have to meet the minimum zoning standards and densities identified in the general plan. So the plan development does not give you the ability to go outside of that, with the exception of a density bonus, which we'll talk about, but it doesn't give you a way out of the zoning and general plan designation that the parcel that or parcels that you're working with have already established. And policy 2234 basically allows a plan development to include non-contiguous parcels as long as they're developed and considered as a whole of the part of the plan development. So there's lots of different things within those general plan policies, but kind of the high level summary I'm giving you today. The next is objective 224, which is the density bonus provisions. And so policy 2241 identifies the maximum density, the open space requirements, and the density bonus calculations, for example, of for the use of a density bonus within the plan development. So moving on down, the objective and the importance of open space 761. One of the key ways that the general plan envisions actually providing for open space lands under policy 7612 is through the plan development permit. So especially with the residential development, it has a 30% requirement for open space. And so that requirement and the use of the development plan tool actually helps us meet our open space requirements for the general plan. Then moving on to objective 8.1.5, which is cluster development. So clustering is one of the key sort of considerations with the plan development. It allows you to cluster development and then provide more open space and more natural resource protection and other things that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But in this particular section, it's speaking about agricultural features and lands, and that the cluster of development helps minimize the loss of choice agricultural lands, and it allows you to use planning techniques that allow natural features as sort of a separation between different land uses. So now we're going to move down into the sort of the implementing ordinance of the general plan, which is the county's zoning ordinance. The specific sections related to the plan development are section 130.28, which is the planning development combining zone. And so this discusses all of the different tools within the plan development combining zone and kind of outlines the process for utilizing those. So I won't speak to all of these, but the applicability. So this actually, the plan development zone can be applicable to both residential and non-residential properties. So it can be utilized for commercial and industrial and other things. However, most of the open space requirements are related to residential development. It does allow the combination with other zones, meaning you can keep the underlying zone, whether it be commercial or industrial or residential, and apply the PD development zone over the top of it. I spoke to some of the zone change and development requirements before. The development requirements for residential, one of the key ones is the keeping of the general plan densities and the to the degree you can, the zoning standards, but the open space requirement also allows for some deviation to the residential development standards that we're used to. Those include setbacks and heights and lot widths and lot sizes, things of that nature. But the plan development through the clustering policies and sort of that planning technique does allow you to create sort of smaller lots than what might have been envisioned originally. But the offset is that, again, the open space. And it also includes the residential density bonuses for open space, which basically means you have the minimum required open space. If for residential projects, they utilize or obtain more open space or preserve more open space, you can actually get some density bonuses to apply more units to the project because of the additional open space that's being preserved. It also speaks to some of the ways that you can utilize the open space as far as passive or recreational and those types of things. And then condominium conversions are actually under the plan development combining zone as well. So if you wanted to do an existing condominium conversion of a building, you would use the plan development as the tool to do so. So next up, plan permit. So this is the actual project to create a development plan. So previously we were speaking to the PD combining zone and the general plan policies. This is the actual application. This is the actual project that the planning department processes. So this section 130.52.040 speaks to all of those things. It talks about the process, that it's applicable to both residential and non-residential. Under review authority and CEQA, it speaks to the fact that it is a discretionary project as far as our code, and that it is subject to CEQA, whatever that appropriate CEQA document may be. It speaks to the scope of approval, which is the planning commission is the first step for plan development. So those projects are seen by the planning commission. Depending on if they're incorporated with a legislative entitlement, they might end up being with the Board of Supervisors, or of course, under an appeal situation. There's findings that are identified that have to be met in order to approve a plan development permit. Concurrent applications, which I think is important and that a lot of folks may not be aware of, but the plan development can sort of assume or take in a design review or a conditional use permit or one of those lower permit applications. And you don't have to have the design review or the CUP with it. You can actually just facilitate it through the plan development permit. Identifies the time limitations and expirations. And then again, what happens to a revision of an approved permit after you've gone through the discretionary process and what that looks like. So the important plan development considerations, at least that I try to look at when we're looking at projects and my staff, is what kind of innovative planning and development techniques are being used? Are they consistent with the plan development permits and the zoning ordinance sections and general plan policies and objectives. What are the flexibility and development standards that are being asked for? Now, those can be both zoning ordinance standards as well as DISM, Design Improvement Standards Manual type standards. But I think they talk a little bit differently in that code. But basically, the plan development is intended to characterize flexibility in all of those types of standards. Maintaining character, identity, and scale of local community. So that's kind of the community compatibility, neighborhood compatibility component of it. Minimizing use compatibility issues. That's especially if you're having a mixed use type of a project where you might have commercial and residential, or office and residential and commercial, that sort of thing. Again, the clustering of development. Have they, used the clustering of the development in order to preserve open space, to preserve natural resources, or archaeological resources, that sort of thing. So some more considerations here. Minimization of environmental impacts. One of the key things for using a plan development is to, cluster development, to make things a little more dense at the development area while preserving and reducing impacts to, species of both plant and animal, and then waterways and other things. So the open space requirements, of course, the 30% minimum for residential. There are exemptions for other types of projects. But again, the potential use for density bonus is reliant upon how much open space is being preserved and what that open space looks like, whether it be active or passive and that sort of thing. So that was my brief overview of the plan development process. I apologize again for the issues related to my presentation there, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments that anybody might have, and open for anything you'd like to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. So leadership team members, anybody have any comments or questions?
I'll jump in with one real quick.
Okay.
So, hey, Rob, thanks for being here tonight. Can you define for our audience, when we talk about open space and dedicated and preserved open space, a lot of people have the perception that if somebody has ranch property or 10-acre estate, that's open space. Could you educate us a little bit about the distinction between planned open space as part of a project, or just somebody having a field?
Sure, I believe I understand the question. Yeah, so there's a lot of different zonings in the county, and we actually include both in our general plan designation and open space designation, as well as a zoning ordinance open space designation. And so those are parcels that are applied those designations to ensure that they're only allowed to do basically whatever limited uses are allowed within those zoning districts. Open space as a part of a plan development project is basically looking at the project as a whole, trying to reduce the overall impact of the project, and then trying to ensure that the rest of that project then becomes open space in the same way. Now, if you just see you could see a lot of open space that has either agricultural or rural, or even some of the more estate residential zoning designations that can have very large parcel sizes, but can be developed to the extent that the general plan and the zoning allow for. So just because it hasn't been developed does not mean that it doesn't have the potential to be developed. And that answers your question.
Yeah, I think because at APAC, we have a lot of people that don't understand when a project is approved and it has an open space provision, that they see a project approval and development as taking open space away, whereas as part of the plan development, you're guaranteeing that open space is actually increasing because it's identified as open space as part of the approvals. It's not a net reduction in open space, it's actually preserving open space so it can't be developed as something else.
Correct. If you, for instance, had a property that was converted into 2-acre parcels that entirely encapsulated the whole property, there could be potentially no open space to a project like that. It could be all privately owned, and then it could have facilities and other things, roadways and whatnot within it, where you could have the same property potentially develop under a plan development, have the same or maybe slightly more units, but have preserved that open space at a minimum of 30% and potentially more, depending on the design of the project.
Thanks, Rob.
So Rob, is an example of that, the Vineyards Project, and I don't know how much of the particulars you remember on that, but that came forward, proposed to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors as a planned development where they wanted to cluster the housing and set aside open space to be managed and protected. And there was a lot of discussions, and I know a lot of people that were not happy with the decision that was made. But from my perspective, we established an additional 30% open space that would be maintained in perpetuity compared to having large acreage parcels, which pretty much by permit, then anybody can do something with their backyard to take out oak trees, to put in pools, to put in gazebos, whatever. It no longer becomes open space that's usable for wildlife. A lot of the trees could disappear over time, things like that, that we look at, maintaining as much of the natural environment as possible. So that's one of the things that I always look at, weighing the pros and cons of these things. Are we getting maintainable in perpetuity open space that helps preserve some of those things that I think a lot of people move to El Dorado Hills for the rural character? And a lot of that's wildlife, right? If you take away all the provisions for wildlife to live in these areas and everybody had fenced in yards, at some point the wildlife is forced to leave. They cannot survive without access to water and food, and everybody's landscape gardening and all those kinds of things that the deer in particular get into. But to me, that was an important part of that consideration. So I don't know if you remember the original plan versus the revised plan, but I think that's something, the public always needs to look at, is what are they currently entitled to build in a given situation versus what are they proposing now? And even though it sounds like the developer is just trying to increase their profit by densifying their project, there's the other side of the story, which is called open space in perpetuity. And that's the part I'm hoping people start to understand a little bit better. A14, which was the last project that Parker Development Company processed through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, was a similar circumstance. There is open space that will be maintained. And if it's designed right, it can add significant amenities to that community. A place you can go walk your dog, a place for wildlife to hang out, whatever it may be, but it becomes community-based open space as opposed to what you have in your personal backyard. And I think there's pluses and minuses to both. So do you have any additional thoughts on that? Have you had a lot of feedback from the public relative to their perspective on it?
Well, yeah, sure. So I'll speak first to the Vineyards Project. I don't know the lots exactly and the total number. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but what I remember was it went from a previously approved sort of 5-acre lot type of a project to a project where I believe it was around 40 something units that had 1-acre lots, but they had preserved all of the open space around it. I think some of it was intended to be used as community vineyard or whatnot, but also they were able to avoid some of the natural resources on the site and historic resources on the site and be able to, like you said, preserve some of that open space. So they did redo that tentative map, if you will, to utilize the plan development to kind of use that clustering type development. I think one of the things that it seems that we get the most comments related to is the development standards. I think that, when somebody looks to the zoning ordinance and they look at an R1 zoning, there's setbacks that are identified and heights that are identified and that sort of thing. And that is intended to govern sort of the regular, tentative parcel map with no other, sort of project or parcel map itself. And so, those are the minimums to ensure that something doesn't have the same level of planning still includes all the life, safety, health things that we care about and also meets the intent of the zoning. When you add the plan development sort of component to that, what we see is a little bit of deviation from some of those setbacks and other things to allow for the plan to sort of incorporate the open spaces and things we want to see. So, it's utilizing those tools, but some folks see that as a project that doesn't meet standards. In my view, it's a project that's utilized a different section of a code and really put themselves up into some requirements that are difficult to achieve in order to bring a better project forward. And so there's a little give and take there.
Thank you. I appreciate that commentary. Any other leadership council questions? Yeah. Richard. Did you got your microphone on? Looks like it might be red. There you go.
Richard Rosser. I've lived here since 1992. When I moved here, there was a whole bunch of open spaces that really weren't open space. They were pieces of parcels, large parcels that just had not been developed. So most, or a lot of residents move here and they see something and they view this as the nature of the community. And I heard the phrase character of the community in which the zoning occurs, and then maintain the character, identity, and scale of the local community. And I'm not sure how that word character is being defined or used. I understand what John is saying about trying to gather together land that will then become open space in perpetuity in areas where it is zoned for development and construction. I think that's substantially different than areas that are designated as open space. And I think that is substantial relative to what is the character of the community. And I think that designation as open space has a greater value in defining what the character of the community is. So if we begin to tweak what is going to be still available as originally designated open space, I think we are really attacking the character of the community, even though we might not have understood initially that all this open space that we did see is not really open space. It's just undeveloped, developable land. So I think in the discussions that go on in our county, when we talk about land that's already open space, I think that's a real core of the character of our community and should be held to a highly critical standard to preserve that. And even though it may be owned by someone as open space, I don't think their ability to necessarily make profit or otherwise should be a factor when we begin to play with how that limited resource land is going to be used. And I think in my discussions with my local residents, I know there's not a good understanding of the two different kinds of vacant land and open space. And I think it makes for difficulty. But I think relative the El Dorado Hills Central Plan issue goes to really impacting the character of our community. And whether it be open space used for, quote, more residences or to making a connecting roadway, we're losing the character of our community, particularly in a place where it is highly visible to a vast majority of the citizens of this community who traverse it on a daily basis.
Good point. So I'm going to ask a question of Rob based upon that, if that's okay with your indulgence. And Rob, from the planning department's perspective, and let's just take Central as an example. We know that the old 98-acre golf course has a land use designation of open space, and it has a zoning of high use recreational. So people hear open space and they think it ought to remain vacant land, undeveloped land, but yet the way our zoning ordinance is set up, you are allowed to take designated land uses of open space and use them for various purposes. High density or high use recreational is one of those. And that was consistent with the old golf course and driving range that were in there on the 98 acres. Now with the proposal that's come forward on Central, and it's still in the Planning Commission review before it ever gets to the board, and we've mentioned before that that looks like it's sometime next year, January to April, as best I can tell, because it's going to take some more time to revisit some of the things related to primarily circulation, the transportation element part of it. But Rob, from a planner's perspective, when you see that difference in the proposal, how do you respond to the maintenance of character, the character of the project? Does that substantially change the character if they propose putting in a top golf facility, which is more of a commercial operation, and a hotel? So how would you as a planner treat that from the standpoint of Richard's comments about the character of our open space?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that, I guess if I'm understanding it correctly, I would say that there is an open space general plan designation, and it describes what is intended to be an open space. And the zoning ordinance that implements that general plan includes special purpose zones that include recreational facilities, like you recognized, both high and low, and some others. And some of those zones have been identified as consistent with open space. And so, as you described, there's a recreational facilities high, I believe, zoning. I'll be quite honest, I don't have the particulars of the Central El Dorado Hills project in front of me. But just speaking to that example of recreational facilities zoning and the open space general plan designation, those have been found to be consistent by the general plan to say that that zoning is a consistent zoning. Now, would you apply that to all of the open space general plan designations? No, because then you wouldn't have any of the preservation of open space that we're looking for in the general plan. So that's why we do have an open space zoning. But that particular site, to my understanding, does not have that open space zoning. It has recreational facilities. It's probably from the history of it being a more of a recreational, golf course than always an open space. And so that was carried forward. And so we would consider that in the way that, I think we would take, you would consider something that was open space zoned to be sort of more concrete of an open space than one that had recreational zoning.
So the zoning is really what the determining factor is in terms of the character and preservation. If it had open space zoning, then that's clearly expected to be a set aside, undeveloped. But when it has a recreational zoning, there is an expectation that something recreational will be put into that general plan land use designation of open space. So it is kind of conflicting terms the way it's written from my perspective. I mean, you can read it different ways, but there is a very definite open space zoning and that's really what you have to look for. Land use open space, zoning open space, that's the property that's supposed to be maintained as some kind of a preserve for any environmental, botanical product, whatever it is, processes. Certain things are designated that way, but when you look at El Dorado Hills, most of the open space we have has some underlying zoning, which is not open space. Some of it is. And that's what it's difficult to try to get the public to understand. There's different types of zoning that are allowed within that general term open space. So that's where I think the conflict of definitions and stuff comes into play. It's undeveloped property or property that was previously developed that's now being proposed for redevelopment with a different application. And that's what's hard to understand for most people.
I think I'll make a footnote or an asterisk on this, in that I believe the original courses were there in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Activities that were considered recreational in the 60s that we have today weren't even imagined that 50 some years ago. So I think, quote, the character of the community, I think there should be some historical consideration to ensure that character isn't a thing that changes every 10 years, but retains a basis that makes the community it is.
I agree with you. I think that's an important fact. That's why I was asking Rob how a planner deals with that. But I think they're looking at it more from what is the prescriptive allowance for the use of the property as currently zoned with whatever land use designation it has. And that's where they're getting that interpretation. So preservation of character from a historical perspective, I'm not sure how they weigh in on that. I think those are discussions that happen with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, if I could chime in, and Rob kind of alluded to this earlier, that would come with community design standards. That you as a community could decide, hey, what do we want this to be as part of our community? And those be established as part of that process. And Rob, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's, I believe, where that would come into play.
Those have been requested by people for the last 5 or 6 years that I know of, and we've always had a difficulty getting them before the within the planning department, getting people assigned, getting on a track to get it done. And we're still struggling to try to get those design standards established for various communities, but we are relaunching an effort. So more to come on that.
You agree with that assessment, Rob?
Yeah, so I think that is true to some degree related to the buildings, right? And the site design. When you're talking about the character of what the other buildings in the community look like, we don't dive down necessarily for single family development into the, to the design standard level. Sometimes there'll be architectural committees for certain developments that are established through the plan development or through a specific plan that will look at that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of the character has to do with the structures that are being built and the site design. And then as the gentleman said, some of it has to do with sort of the aesthetics of the overall neighborhood, including undeveloped and developed parcels. And I would just add to this discussion that there's tables in the general plan, table 2-4, for instance, gives a whole matrix, all of the general plan land use designations against all of the zoning designations, and it tells you which ones are consistent or not. And then you have all the general plan policies to back that up. So when you're asking what we're looking at when we're talking about developing a project, we're looking at not only the general plan designation and the zoning, but all of the applicable general plan policies and zoning related standards, as a whole, in trying to evaluate that project.
Any other leadership council comments before we go to the public here? John Razzler, I think and would you please speak in the microphone, John? I think it's working, isn't it? Oh, you got the one right in front of you. You're okay. You're okay. You got one in front of you. I didn't know I was there. So you're good.
Staying with the idea that you mentioned about character, recreation can be anything. Okay, so you can put in bike paths, you can put in walking paths, and you're still keeping the character of that land. It's open land. It's not basically has any high structures or anything on there. So would that apply to the zoning, let's say, for example, of the golf course? You're keeping the character and you're bringing in recreational activities that don't require big structures or anything. Robert, that's the question to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're getting into a little bit outside of sort of what I intended to be the presentation.
We're getting out of that a little bit. Yeah.
I'll be honest. I wasn't planning to speak to any particular project because I feel like there's more folks that should probably be in a discussion like that. But there's quite a few different outcomes that could come from a recreational. He's absolutely right. There's passive, there's more active. There's a lot of people's perspectives are different too on what is a recreational, and what is the right approach and all of that. So, I mean, it's very hard to say that absolutely that could be, an outcome of a recreational type facility, that it be more passive and more walking and things like that than a ball field or something like that. But I think that open space and that recreational facility high sort of includes, if you look at the zoning table and all the allowed uses, indoor and outdoor and passive and all those types of things. So it's really on the applicant or landowner or what have you, or the public or the community to kind of identify what they want to see there. And that's hopefully what we bring forward.
So Rob, would you speak a little bit to by right development? Because once you have a zoning and you own the property, by right, you have the ability to build certain types of structures, amenities, uses, applications out of it consistent with the zoning. And I don't believe that even requires a planning commission review. There's generally no public inputs on those things unless there's an exceptional situation with CEQA or something else. But by right typically allows that property owner to develop it consistent with the zoning. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. In the zoning ordinance, it refers to it as a permitted use. And so it's a ministerial action under CEQA, so it doesn't require CEQA analysis. And it's not discretionary, at least from the county's perspective. So it doesn't require the discretion of the planning commission or the planning director or the board of supervisors. It's basically, but one thing that Commissioner Vania brought up was, the development and application of community design standards. So that is something when you have objective standards and you have them in your ordinance that you can apply to things, especially under a design review overlay, for instance, where you can say, these are our standards and you have to meet those. When right now the county has guidelines, which makes it very difficult, especially for planning staff, because it's not a lot of shalls, it's a lot of shoulds. And so, or considers. And so we don't have those hard standards in place. We are certainly working towards getting them in place, starting with the community regions. Those are going to be, I think really beneficial for folks, especially if they participate and get, because that does get down to the character of what you want to see out there, at least for the built environment. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There is projects that are permitted uses where they have to meet the objective standards of the planning department, the environmental management department, Department of Transportation, and all that. And if you can do all of those things, you're allowed to basically move forward with the building permit.
Okay, so that's kind of the dilemma, I think, with that particular project. I don't want to dwell on Central. So any other questions or comments from anybody present here in the conference room? Do we have anybody on Zoom? I see one hand. Yeah.
Maria.
Maria, we can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're muted. Can you speak to us, please? Or you have to bring her up to panels.
Does
There
that
you
work?
go. You're there. Thank you.
You had to give me the option to unmute first.
Okay.
Okay, this is a comment because I don't understand, and I'm not sure, I doubt if this is a question for Mr. Peters, but I'm listening to Mr. Ross and Mr. Rassler. And I think they're talking about the old golf course. And then this goes back to my thinking of what is open space, parks, not Parker, Measure E. And the CSD has come up with 3 proposals for a community park. And certainly the 3rd proposal is extremely intensive. I mean, a ginormous, meeting center, the aquatic park. I mean, it just seems like it's a lot of concrete plopped down on top of what is being argued as let's keep our open space. So my comment, possibly a question is, how do we respond to that? I mean, part of me thinks it's pretty darn exciting that El Dorado Hills could get all this stuff, all this flashy stuff. But what's the point of arguing for open space or parks when this land is really for recreational use? And if I understand it, recreational use certainly does not mean dedicated open space. Our wildlife will not be frolicking in the amphitheater. Did you hear that?
Yes, we heard you, Maria. Thank you. So Rob, I don't know if that's something you can respond to or care to. I mean,
I actually didn't really have a response. I haven't seen the 3 different proposals, so I don't have a good point of reference on that one. But I think that there is definitely different levels of intensity of recreational uses. I think one of the other gentlemen was speaking to that earlier, and there's a whole variety of where it could be very intense, very facility building heavy, or more preserve nature, natural, active, or passive type of a recreational use.
I will mention or add the fact that with the current development agreement for Central, and that's going to change substantially as this thing moves on. There is, I think, 15 acres identified that was offered to the Community Services District for the Quimby Act equivalent for parks and recreational uses. I'm not sure where they stand on that at this present point in time, but when they're proposing the kinds of projects that Maria is talking about, I'm presuming, maybe I'm wrong, that would go within that 15-acre designation if that development agreement continues forward the way it is. Because right now I think it's in question who would receive that dedication, or if it would be on this site. So there's a lot of variables involved. But I think that's why the CSD took the initiative to put together some plans. But I can't verify that. I don't know exactly what the motivation was, but it would be presumable that if they had 15 acres dedicated to them as part of this Quimby Act requirements, that they could use it for those kinds of facilities. And it would be consistent with what the high intensity recreational facility was intended to be. But that's obviously subject to interpretation and review by our planning staff. So a lot of variables out there, Maria. I'm not sure we can give you a real good answer to that kind of a question, because I think it's going to unfold as we move further through the review process with Central. And that's a TBD. So.
Can I still speak?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure. When I look at the maps that the CSD is putting out, their plans and what they've said in terms of they've tried to negotiate for more land, but they haven't been able to acquire it from Parker Development. What I don't see any mention of how much land is being covered by the CSD park proposal.
Yeah, and you'd have to take that to the CSD for the question. I haven't seen the maps myself, but I don't know.
I was at the redistricting meeting the night that they discussed that with CSD, but looking back on the video recording and some of the minutes from that meeting, as they're envisioning using more of the 99 acres of the golf course. Their goal is obviously to obtain 99 acres, but I think since Supervisor Heidel had mentioned that there might be a revisitation of the development agreement based off of maybe some proposed changes, that they might be able to obtain either more space, buy more space, make some sort of other arrangements to obtain more space to provide room for one of these three alternatives. And I know Maria's question, I've heard it many times myself, how do you pay for this? It's one thing to obtain the space, and then it's another thing to actually develop all these amazing facilities, which I'm sure we would all love to see, but I don't know how obtainable it is. So I believe based on the three variants that they proposed in their meeting, and they were just proposals, that those are things that they'd like to do. I don't know that they're things that they can do, or if they have a willing partner to do it.
Me again. Okay, the CSD would like comments in by some certain date, and I would like to understand better what I'm commenting on. And I would say, yeah, it looks like the park is covering the entire golf course. They've got parking for 750 cars. But, you know, I can't exactly figure out how much 15 acres is, but certainly the park is huge, absolutely huge.
I think those questions are better addressed to the CSD. They do have a meeting coming up, because I know I've got a conflict with a meeting the same. That's
it's next Wednesday.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that would be the
During APAC.
Yes, but they want comments before the meeting. So
Understand.
I'm trying to find out information before I can make comments. That's all. Thank you.
I don't think we can give you that information. You have to go to the CSD directly, I think, but thank you. Any other comments? Zoom participants? I'm not seeing any. So, all right. Thank you, Rob, for your time this evening and stuff, and sharing the information relative to the PDs and the density bonus and all the other things. Obviously, it's not an easy thing to understand. You kind of have to walk through a project, in my opinion, to really understand all the puts and takes and the considerations that goes on. But hopefully the commentary you heard here this evening is helpful in terms of understanding what the residents are looking for. The character of El Dorado Hills, I think, is a factor that plays into this. But when you have an owner of property, you have by rights ability to develop it, then I'm not sure with limited inputs, the public has a whole lot to say about it. I mean, if I was a property owner and somebody says, you can't develop your property, but I'm zoned to develop it that way, why can you refuse my ability to develop the property? So a lot of this gets into history. It's not brand new, right? It's what is the provisions that are currently in place, and how do you make the best of them for the community's benefit? That's the way I always look at it. And I don't know what the answer is on Central. That's yet to unfold. So good commentary. Thank you, Rob, again. And hopefully we won't have to bring you back on this one. But I'm sure Central will come up. Yeah.
We would love to have you at APAC, Rob, when you have a free Wednesday evening in some future month. But thank you tonight.
Okay, I'll reach out to you and discuss that. How's that?
There you go. All right. Thanks again, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 5, supervisor communications. And the first thing I wanted to introduce Karen Purdich and Jan Robbins, who are here with us this evening. They wanted to share with us their annual campaign for the El Dorado Hills Friends of the Library, and that starts November 1st. So, hey, welcome to November 1st. So please, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Is this on?
It's just a Zoom mic, that's all.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you for having us. Again, my name is Jan Robbins. I'm the branch manager at the El Dorado Hills Library. And with me is Claire Purdich. She's a friend of the library member and a volunteer, and she's helping with community outreach. So I'm going to just speak briefly of what this last year and a half looked like for the El Dorado Hills Library, and then Claire's going to talk about how the Friends have supported us and bringing on ongoing support also.
Sorry.
So as always, libraries are essential now more than ever. Throughout the pandemic, we continue to provide those essential resources. You walk through the door, you have traditional resources such as fiction, nonfiction books for all ages. We've got books, large print books, a wonderful collection of foreign language books. We've got a great children's area, places to sit and quiet reading. We were down for 4 months with COVID, but we try to continue those essential services even while we're closed. So the El Dorado Hills Library, we help to connect people through educational programming and enrichment classes. When the library closed down, it was like, okay, how do we use Zoom? What's the best way to get back out into the community and reach out to people? This is Debbie Arenas. She got online, invited her Storytime families, and did this from her home in the evenings to be able to provide stories and just those beautiful experiences for the little kids. It's a little sense of stability in a time that was uncertain for so many parents. We also did some great outreach throughout the summer. We did these craft programs where invited our community to come down and grab a bag full of craft supplies. They took them home, the kids created, and then at the end of the week, they got together on a Zoom platform and shared what they made. Again, it's just a powerful way to continue to connect to our families and gave them something other to think about than how the pandemic is affecting their lives. The El Dorado Hills Library worked hard to make our communities healthier. We're a part of the community hubs. This is a joint program between County Office of Education and First 5 El Dorado and the Health Department and libraries. And our community hub partners went out. We had a drive-through event. That young mom on the left there, she stopped by, picked up free diapers and some food for her family, and then also connected these families with local resources. The First 5 community hub partners also went out to do some visit with Storytime parents. They drove around the community, got out of their cars, stayed on the sidewalk. Little children came out to their front door and just greeted Debbie and the library storytellers. And just again, made that special connection with our families during the pandemic. The library also began to support parents who were forced into becoming distant learning teachers for the first time. With schools closed and school libraries closed, we saw an influx of parents coming in to get our access resources so they could support their children's learning. This young lady on the left, she's picking out some beginner readers. We saw those books just those shelves were bare each afternoon, and we'd refill them the next morning and they'd become bare again. And so our friends of the library and the Serrano Men's Book Club put some funds together for us, and we bought thousands of brand new beginner readers for these parents that were trying to help support their kids. We noticed this, the shelves being empty back and forth, but it wasn't until the recent statistics for the year that I just learned in this last budget year that we had more children's items checked out in the middle of a pandemic at the El Dorado Hills Library than ever before in its 15 years of existence. So even with 4 months of closed doors, the library was still so essential to our parents. On top of that, we also gave out 1,000 new library cards, even with the library closed for 4 months. We also saw this influx of local college kids coming in. Their college libraries were closed and spaces to study. And so every day there would be college kids trying to grab all the tables we could provide them in order to access the free internet service and the free wireless, or use the computers. We also saw lots of job searchers jumping on our computers, searching for jobs and trying to find county resources. We also built up our business section because it seems like this has been a time where people are reimagining what they can be. And so there are a lot of people came in and questions about do you have resources on how I can learn how to start my own business or just take my career in different directions. So from all the challenges in COVID, we've seen these amazing opportunities too. So the library also became a lifeline for our community in times of needs. We weren't quite sure what to do when the doors closed, but we got busy quick and did some major cleaning in the library, which was much needed. And then we began curbside pickup like many retail organizations did. This is Katie and Lauren on to the left. They're bagging up curbside pickup items. So families would place holds on books and we'd gather them each day. And we were delivering about 25 to 30 bags out to people in their cars each day during the height of the curbside pickup. Even with the library doors open now, just yesterday we had a call, can you bring my books out to me? And a library staff member jumped up and said, yes, we'll continue to do that. And then on the right is actually Jason, and he is putting together face masks. We have 7 working 3D printers in our 3D printer lab, and a volunteer took those home. He began to print the little spears and the little white spears. Over 1,000 of those face shields, and brought them back to the library. Library staff put them together and we distributed them to local hospitals, local doctor's office, local dentist office. They went to the health department. They went to anybody that needed that PPE when it was hard to get things in the beginning of the pandemic. So we were kept busy trying to get that out to our community. We also became a part of the seniors, helping the seniors sign up for vaccination appointments. There was a senior hotline for those that had questions on how to get the vaccine when it was first available. And so the library jumped in and took a lot of those calls. I would spend 10 minutes helping a senior sign up. And I tell you, I got blessed many times during the day when the call ended and the senior would say, oh, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. I couldn't have done this. These were individuals that didn't have computers, that didn't have internet access. They felt alone at home, not sure where to go. So that was super rewarding for the county to be able to help those seniors. And then lastly, also part of the Caldor Fire, we were Placerville Library and the Cameron Park Library. They opened their doors throughout the weekends and put some staff in there so victims could have a nice, cool place to come and have a book to read. And they also distributed food and information out from our libraries. So now more than ever, libraries are so essential, and they're so critical. But the work we're doing we couldn't do the work we're doing without our friends. Our friends in the library are so essential. This is a picture of a group at our monthly meeting. When I first put it out there, I said, hey, let's Zoom. Maybe one of those people had ever done it. And so it was a big learning curve for all of them to get the equipment and to figure it all out. But look at us now, they're doing it and they've done some amazing things. So Claire's going to talk about what those amazing things are. Thank you.
So some of you might be wondering, God, I thought her name was Karen. Why is this Claire? In the spirit of the times and rebranding, and I'd rather go by Claire than Karen.
Okay.
Karen does have some connotations to some, so I decided to leapfrog out of that, if you're wondering. So one of the things, I'm happy to be here as a representative of the Friends of the El Dorado Hills Library. We are the fundraising arm of the library. A lot of times when people say, well, of course I'm a friend, I have a library card, but that's really a myth, a misunderstanding. A library card is what gives you access to use all the resources in the library. But becoming a member of the Friends is what allows you to help us in our fundraising process. Even just getting your membership of $10 as an individual or $20 as a family, or our preference, $250 as a lifetime member, immediately goes into the coffers to buy more books, to buy more chairs to go for the children's areas and things like that. So we really put a lot of emphasis on that. And of course, we're a 501c3 organization. So all of the money that's donated to the library is tax deductible. And as you may know, our memberships are renewed every year, unless you're, of course, a lifetime member. And we do a lot of other fundraising activities. Probably most people know us for our book sales, which we do 6 times a year. And we've done all sorts of creative things. We've had them online. We've had them, in the community room. We've had them outside. So we've done a whole things. And that's one of our main impetuses to raise money, but we do a lot more than that. When people donate books, I think we could go to the next slide, which Dan probably made it, is everybody has kind of seen that we collect books for our book sales, but what they might not know is that the books actually have 3 possible next lives. They could go into our book sale. They could join our collection if Jan and her staff think they're worthy or new enough. And thirdly, they can also go to Amazon. We have a very active group that scans with special software to see whether we can get what kind of money we can get for a certain book, and they've been responding to that. And actually, a 4th one is if none of those 3 things result in a sale, we then make it open to other local libraries or outreach groups so that they can provide books for their people. Obviously, at some point they pay nothing. And you may know that before last, we actually tried a new thing to help people not only have access to more books, but also to be able to maybe have their first experience with the libraries. We gave away a lot of books. So, and we have some in the thing. So next slide, please. So how can you help the Friends of the Library, which means how can you help the library, is of course, the first step is joining us as a member. And it's easy to do. Yes, you could still use paper, and we brought some paper if you'd like that, but you can go online and very easily sign up to become a member, and you immediately get back your receipt. So for your tax records. And we encourage all of you. How many people are already members? Okay, who's a lifetime member? Okay. So one of the special parts about being a lifetime member, not only do you get to be really proud, but you also get your name on a little plaque in the lobby. And when the world is a little more, even more open, we'll be having a little bit more social activities to bring in special activities for our friends. So we encourage you to think about that. Next slide, please. So as I say, how do we, and oh, I forgot the most important thing besides your name on a plaque is you also get one of our car decals for your car, which is up there in the corner there. And and you also on Friday, we have our book sales. We have them on Friday and Saturday, and Friday is for members only. Okay. Next slide, please. So it was really wonderful that your meeting coincided with the start of our annual campaign. This is our 3rd year of doing an annual campaign. And the reason we started doing it 3 years ago was that some of us said we need a way to get more money. And so we decided to really reach out to the community and let them have a better understanding of what we do and what we could do. So last year, people were phenomenal We had a phenomenal year. We were lucky that the Serrano Men's Book Club gave us an extra $8,000, which was allowed us to have a match. And we're thrilled that this year they've raised that to a $10,000 match. So we feel very optimistic that we will meet and hopefully exceed our goal of $30,000. Now remember, all that money is going to buying books, ebooks, things like, and if you've had a chance to come to the library recently, we opened up the Early Literacy Play Center for children 0 to 5. And all of that was completely funded by the Friends of the Library. My tagline for the Friends of the Library is we're the fail-safe for the library. When they need money, I can't find it, friends always say, we're there, here it is. So we want to thank everybody for that. Next slide, please. So what's for the future? So thanks to Kevin Lowen at CSD, we got some figures about some developments that have been already approved in the area. This has changed because this was a month ago. But when you look at new homes, when you're in the Friends of the Library, you go, well, every home represents potentially 2 new users of the library. That means 2 more people who want to use our resources. So you can see it's quite a few users on the horizon, just if we do with what's approved. Next slide, please. We also have an awful lot of homes that are at least under consideration. That means that many more users. So our library, if you've been in it, how many people have been in the library in the last month or 2? Okay, you'll see that we're pretty crowded. You know, we have an extensive collection, but you can only put so many books on so many shelves. And so we're really looking at this increase in users and members that we're going to have to find a new place to put more stuff in. So we're starting to dream a dream. And our dream is that maybe we'll be able to add on to our library. Now, right now, it's just a dream. We're looking into feasibility, but we're dreaming a dream. And next slide, please. And our dream is looking at that dirt right next to us. So we're just in the feasibility stage and baby steps into it, because obviously, just like we talked about in terms of planning, there's lots and lots of factors that go into deciding it could be a reality. But I use Betty January. If any of you know her, she was the woman who really was a force behind having the original building. So she's my role model. And I hope that maybe we can do her proud by being able to get a second building at some time. So we appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and hopefully your new membership in the library. Is there any questions either Jan or I could answer for you?
Leadership team, anybody?
So the lifetime membership is per member, or is it?
It could be a family.
Be a family, okay,
Or a business.
okay, okay.
And
Very good.
it's such a deal. It's like we recently pitched to a few people outside of direct El Dorado Hills. They go, $250, that's such a deal. Here, I'll write my check right now. That is the truth. So any other questions?
No, just great job during the pandemic with the face shields. I think we received some of those here and we appreciated that. That was definitely the time when it was hard to find that resource. So that was awesome. And then the help to the seniors with the vaccine sign up. I know it was a huge concern of ours how we're going to do that. So very much appreciated what you guys did.
Jan's staff, sometimes she's modest. Jan's staff is phenomenal. I mean, if you think about how fast within 2 weeks, they went from being a library that did everything person to person to being a Zoom oriented library. When I thought it was so amazing when they did their first children's story time telling via Zoom. But they've done a lot of things and they always rise to the challenge. So it makes it a pleasure for the Friends to support Jan and her entire staff in anything.
So Claire, I think we do have one Zoom participant that wants to raise a question.
Yeah.
Or make a comment. I'm not sure which it is, but.
Okay, we're ready for both.
Can I go? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, okay, let me make a comment. I love the library. It's absolutely amazing that we can pick up books and we don't have to pay for them. And that's my comment part. The question part is, who owns the dirt lot?
It's our understanding that it's owned by the county. And that's part of our feasibility, is really understanding, you know, you can dream a dream, but you got to have dollars and cents and a real plan. And so that's what we're working on now, just taking the first baby steps to understand all that.
I'll confirm it is owned by the county, but there have been several proposals for that property. I'm not sure which is going to get advanced. There's still in discussion, but yeah, I think we need to hear what the dream is from the library in more detail, so we better understand it. So
we've just put some feelers out to a few people in the community just as a start, and we know that we have a lot more to do because it's a business proposal, and so it has to be prepared appropriately.
Right, very good.
To be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan and Claire. I think we've wrapped up that. So thank you very much,
Okay,
and good luck with your campaign. And yeah, hopefully this will get better as time goes on. So, all right, with that, I'm going to move to 3 other items quickly that I thought were important to mention. El Dorado Hills redistricting, and in fact, El Dorado County redistricting. We have 3 new maps that are out on the surveyor's website. They're titled, and if you don't remember what happened to the Board of Supervisors decided that the city-based map, number 1 from the original maps that were presented, was the preferred to use as the standard that we would do deviations from, adjustments to, etc. So with the direction that we gave to staff to try to preserve as much of the community areas that are designated communities of interest, whole, to not split them up, staff went and prepared 3 additional maps. The first of those maps is entitled City-Based Alternative Revised number 1, or revision number 1. And then there's City-Based Map revision number 2. And then there's number 3 is a Pollock Pines alternative, which has made some significant adjustments to basically move Pollock Pines out of District 5, as I understand it. So that was the primary emphasis, is to get all of Pollock Pines as one district, but not in District 5. And that substantially changed some of those map proposals. So I'm not sure that anybody's going to like any of those 3 new alternatives. Those are what have been developed to date. There was an effort to get another map put together that was more along the lines of what the chamber wanted to see, splitting El Dorado Hills in half. And after looking at that and comparing numbers and kind of come to the reconciliation that it's very difficult to do if you're even trying to take and put all of the population, you have Cameron Park into District 1 that's currently part of District 2. Because that was the kind of the concept, is take all of the District 2 Cameron Park population, put it into District 1 and draw the line along Highway 50, and everything south of Highway 50 would go into District 2. But the numbers don't offset. And there was some confusion over the 95762 population versus population south of Highway 50 in District 1. So I don't think that map is viable at this point, even though there was a lot of effort put in to see what we can do. It's a very tough thing to try to figure out how you would divide El Dorado Hills more equally into only 2 districts without getting in and breaking up those communities of interest. That is not got a number, because I don't think it's going to produce a map. Right. So I don't think there will be a 4th map. There'll be 3 maps to discuss on November 3rd. That's coming up Wednesday, 2 days from today. And it's from 9 a.m. to noon, which is kind of an unusual time. Normally the Board of Supervisors has had these meetings in the evening hours, but this one is a daytime provision. So if you have any comments on any of the 3 new maps, or if you think the original city-based map number 1 is the best going without any changes, then I would emphasize and encourage you to submit those comments back to our clerk of the board, who will put them into the registrar system for recognition as part of the public record, that you as an individual or you as a group had an opinion on which of those redistricting approaches would be more preferable from your perspective. So as you might imagine, when you try to do these things in a very short period of time, you're never going to get consensus, and you're never going to get people really happy about the final product, in my opinion. So I think it's going to end up being probably a split vote, but we'll see how it ends up. There's Board of Supervisors ultimately make the decision in December. So we've saved a little bit of time, no later than December, I should say. It may be made earlier than that, but our deadline is December 15th. So we're basically 45 days and counting to when we need to have this finalized and submitted to the state for recording. So anyway, if you have an interest in that, please attend the meeting on Wednesday or submit your comments. Any questions on that one? I didn't want to get into a lot of depth. Like I said, the surveyor site has the maps.
I know that John Ressler was waiting and he had to leave just after 6.
Okay.
So, and what he conveyed to me is consistent with what our working group had heard, was that, you know, the age-restricted communities south of Highway 50 want to be their community of interest. They want to be affiliated, and they would prefer to be with Blackstone and have everything south of the freeway be one district. You know, I think their intent was District 2. I personally don't care what number district is. We were just looking for an effort to make it representative of the community, realizing that Cameron Park continues to be split up in a lot of the proposed maps. And I know that there was a discussion at the redistricting meeting in October. And I know that you had asked the question, why is it important, you know, to unify Pollock Pines in one district? And it is important because it is a community. But why is there no provision or consideration that Cameron Park is being separated? Some of these maps are not as separated as before. And the response was from supervisors representing Cameron Park was that nobody in Cameron Park has said anything about it. So, yeah.
I've seen comments too, so I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
know
where that
that's,
came from, but
so-
okay.
Here nor there. And I know that, you know, we did make an effort, and there's also a political consideration here, and it's not supposed to be. And perhaps if we had approached the maps a little differently and just said, you know, we don't care if a supervisor is not in their district or in their district, here's the map that we prefer. Maybe that would have been a more obtainable goal. You know, from my provision, you know, the Bass Lake area, we're splitting Woodridge in the hills, the Bass Lake villages off of Bridlewood Canyon, and they share a fence, and that's the district boundary. That is absurd. We are one community, 1,000 homes, and we have the same interests. So we'll all be putting our comments in.
Yep, please, please. Because it doesn't say that the board can't decide to do another derivative of the map. We're
Yeah,
trying to
and I
make
know
sure.
that there's like a percentage.
This is a convergence process, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to converge down to one map that we can hopefully get 3
Well, we
supervisors
approached
to
it,
support.
you know, as the Bass Lake Action Committee, you know, our first focus was Bass Lake, but then we looked at it as Dorado Hills and Cameron Park. What's representative? We're suburban communities. We're not Georgetown. We're not, you know, Omo Ranch. We're not, you know. So making 400 residents in El Dorado Hills part of District 3, those people have no voice. 300 people out of 38,000, you have no voice. So we were looking for a more representative balance. Hard to do. We sat and chewed it up, and the thing that always came back was that, you know, hey, you know, if we do it this way, this supervisor can be out of a district, and you need 3 supervisors to support what you're proposing. So just make your comments. It's important. If you know, I always say I'm wrong most of the time, but if you just make your concerns known, it might be valid. It might be something to consider. So to Supervisor Heidel's point, put your comments in, send them an email if you can't make the meeting, and it's via Zoom just like this, so you can participate. So, and I'll leave it at that.
Great. No, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Anybody else have a quick comment or question on this? So attend the meeting Wednesday if you're really interested and have the time, because I think it's going to be a lengthy discussion, but hopefully not something that takes all 3 hours, but we will see. Yeah, Alan.
Where do you find the maps on your, is it on the supervisor website?
It's on the surveyor's website.
If you go to the county website, it scrolls different areas of the website, scrolls past the top. The redistricting is a link at the bottom of the images moving. So you click on the redistricting one and all the maps are there.
Oh, thank you very much.
Even the first ones we looked at as opposed to the last
You'll
3.
see
again.
the current 3 that are being proposed for the next meeting, plus the 10 that were proposed. And
We had 9 maps the first meeting, and I think we've added 3 more. So now, but we basically said we want to focus on map number 1 from the first round. And so I would only look at map number 1 from the first round and then these 3 derivatives, because they were supposed to be making the process more consistent with communities of interest. And I think in part they hit the mark, and in part they missed it again. So that's a discussion the board will have. All right, so I want to move on. I'm not seeing any Zoom participants here. Town and Country Village J6, the conceptual presentation was made to the Board of Supervisors. That's up off of Bass Lake Road, if you're not familiar with it. They're proposing 2 hotels, on-site workforce housing, a lot of different things, bike paths, trails, connectivity from one side of Bass Lake Road to the other side with a trestle bridge, a lot of historical considerations, but my comment was it was well received with a lot of support by mostly the board, but other people. But we all recognize that traffic and circulation and air quality are always going to be things that you have to look at and mitigate, because whenever you add some kind of a significant facility, the answer is probably the road is not currently capable of handling that traffic. And Bass Lake Road is certainly one of those that we don't have sufficient capacity. So my anticipation is that the mitigation would require 4 lanes on Bass Lake Road, at least from Highway 50 all the way to where the current country club alignment is, and maybe further. So that's to be resolved and worked out as their project moves forward, the environmental review, CEQA, and all the other steps. So more to come on that one, but at least the presentation I thought went pretty well.
How many years out would something like that typically be?
I'm thinking at least 3, probably 4.
Till they break ground.
Well, and then it's a phased project. after
Right,
that.
and then, because they
Probably
they want to emphasize construction on only part of it to start with, and they got
The
to,
original intent was to start
Right.
with the hotel. and
Right.
To support the rest of the residential.
but APAC has got a lot of the information on their website if you want to look at it. The
They've
county has
been
it.
Very generous with their time in the community, the Bass Lake community, reaching out to neighbors, and they've been to APAC 3 or 4 times now. And so they want to hear community concerns and ideas. So again, make your comments known.
They're everywhere. They came to see that.
Okay, the last thing I want to cover is the special board of supervisors meeting tomorrow, because we did not have a board meeting scheduled for this Tuesday. But the primary reason we called the special meeting is to address the Caldor fire relief planning and what we've been able to do to help the victims from the loss of their property, the livelihood, et cetera, from the Caldor fire. There's a lot of things to report on. There's a lot of work yet to be done. There's stuff going on in planning and building to make adjustments so that we can allow people back on their property on a temporary basis without all the bells and whistles for rehabilitation, but they do have to have a clean site. It has to be certified. You can't just go out and pick up some of the ashes and stuff and think you're going to rebuild. That's not going to happen. You will be stopped. So fortunately, it doesn't affect any El Dorado Hills residents that I know of who own property in Grizzly Flat in particular, but there were a number of people that I do know that own cabins up along Highway 50 that was up in the Phillips area that lost those cabins. And so that is a separate case. That is U.S. Forestry Service property. My understanding in conversations today is the Forestry Service has said they're going to be responsible for the cleanup there. So we're not going to have to require on Cal OES to do the cleanup certification. It's Forestry Service work. So presumably they're asking for a budget, and hopefully that'll move forward. But I think that's the best answer we can come up with. And then also, since we had the special meeting called for Caldor, and we had a lot of things that got pushed to the right in other board agendas, the other key thing that we're going to be talking about is the Federal American Rescue Plan Act funding distributions. We have a recommendation from our CAO and his staff on how to spend the first round of ARP funds, recognizing there were 2 increments. We've received the first increment. The second increment will be received in 2022. But that'll be a review process. The first time the board has had a chance to sit together and compare notes and prioritize what we think should be funded immediately versus things that we want to wait on and see how it goes or whatever the discussion is. So that's another important part. And this would involve small businesses. It would involve our school systems. It would involve a lot of the departments, county department specific funding. So it'll be a pretty big discussion tomorrow. So those are the things I wanted to bring to your attention. Any comments or questions on the last 2 beyond redistricting?
Yes, on the Caldor fire, is there a, you mentioned that, they can't get back on site until they've been certified, which is difficult.
Well, they can't rebuild and they have to have potable water, but they could actually build, move a trailer out there.
That's my question. Could they get on site if it hasn't been cleaned up yet? Because it's really important to get people back on there.
As long as they're not prohibiting the cleanup, the Cal OES would want to do if they've given them a right of access, but they have to have electrical power. I don't think they're going to allow a bunch of RVs out there with generators for a long period of time. They'd have to eventually have electrical power restored. They have to have potable water. So you don't have to truck it all in. And then there's probably some other things environmental health wants to make sure of if they were hooked to a septic system, that all of that is not contaminated if they're gonna, you know, connect their RV to that. So that's a lot of the stuff that has to be walked through, but you would not.
I just know the state and the feds,
Right.
They don't normally give that much consideration, because they're dealing with huge issues. I understand that, but based on my own personal experience dealing with Paradise Campfire myself.
Yep.
Man, the more the local jurisdictions can do to press them to make some sort of exceptions for the sake of the residents, I would just encourage the board members to do whatever they can and staff to help these guys out, because that's the answer you're going to get from the state and feds. And hey, this is our process. This is how we do it. So whatever you guys can do, greatly appreciated by your decision.
Yep. So that discussion will happen tomorrow. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to attend part of that or listen to the final comments on it. So with that, I'm going to move to our leadership team progress reports. We always start with public safety, and I see that we do have Officer Andrew Brown. I didn't see anybody from the Sheriff's Department. Do we have somebody? So let's take the CHP. Officer Brown, welcome.
Hi, Supervisor Heidel. Can you hear me?
So, yeah, we can hear you fine. Go ahead, Andrew.
Excellent. Glad to be back after a short hiatus, I guess. But yeah, it's been one exciting month after another for the Highway Patrol and for this county, I tell you what. But for some positive news, I just want to kick it off and saying that our Toys for Tots Chips for Kids program is off and rolling to a good start. We have storage locations already set up thanks to our county's Toys for Tots rep, and we're moving ahead with our Chips for Kids toy drive and giveaways and all the above. So just a heads up for the community and anyone in this room or in this meeting. The distribution is pretty early in December, so it's we'd like to have toys donated and ready for distribution by the end of the first week of December. That would be helpful. And then kind of going into our statistics for the year, we're looking at about 20 fatal collisions for our area, with 21 deceased persons for those collisions within the western slope of El Dorado County in unincorporated roadways. So that's a little bit higher than last year, but nothing like the year before last year, where we had quite a bit of fatals. And then kind of playing off of that, because of those years that we had and the statistics that we're gathering from those fatal collisions and collisions in general, we've been awarded again. The Placerville area has been awarded the regional campaign against impaired driving arcade for the Placerville area. That's a special dispensation given to us by the commissioner of the department, and us and another area are sharing those. This grant, which the main goal is going to be enhanced enforcement with this grant. It's additional officers on the road, additional manpower to address the issue of DUI driving and arrest those DUI drivers before they can do the harm on the roads that we all know that they do. So we'll be setting up, this kicked off in October 1st. We have been working it already quite a bit this last October, and then throughout the next couple of months, stakeholders and task force members will be identified, and we'll be sending out meetings. Probably Cindy will be getting those, and your office, John, will be getting those, and the fire departments and local stakeholders and task force members will be getting invites. We'll be setting up meetings to talk about what the statistics are in our area, and field information from the public and these identified stakeholders and task force members as to how to, where to, what to apply to address the issue of DUI driving, whether it be alcohol and or drugs. So that's about where I'm at right now, and we're happy that fires are over, happy that the rain is here and the weather is here, and it's a blessing, that's for sure. So any questions from anyone in the public or you, Supervisor, or anyone there?
Leadership team? Anybody in the audience?
How to donate toys.
Yes. How is the question, Andrew? How do you donate to Toys for Tots?
So you can bring them by the CHP office in Placerville. I believe, let me put it out so that Supervisor, you can put it out on
Yes.
minutes. I'll send an email.
Okay.
And I'll get you some donation spots. They've limited our donation spots where we're putting out barrels this year. It's a little bit less, but we're looking at a good windfall of donations and money to be purchasing toys leading up to this donation. So we're doing pretty well, and we're very, very, very blessed in this county how generous they are. The thousands and thousands of toys that we can give away to hundreds of individual kids and families in this community. It's just amazing. And a big thanks to Toys for Tots for helping Chips for Kids shine so bright, and we appreciate their assistance. So that was a really long answer to not answer your question. I'll let you know, but mainly the CHP office here in Placerville.
I know in the past, the county supervisor's office has been a place you could deposit the Toys for Tots, I believe. I'm not sure if that's going to be this year again. Fire department sometimes has been involved with that. I'm not sure if that's a plan, Chief Lilly.
Yeah, so we are doing our Santa Run December 7th to the 11th. It's a food and toy drive. The unique aspect with Toys for Tots is they like their toy donations early because they do their giveaway event early in December. So they complement each other, but they're slightly different. So you definitely, if you want to go specific to Toys for Tots, support Officer Brown here, I think his donation locations would be targeting that activity. The fire department food and toy drive will encompass multiple other toy giveaway locations.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So we'll get into the minutes, Andrew, and make sure that everybody has the ability to know where they can make donations, where the drop-off spots are. Hopefully there's one in El Dorado Hills. Not sure if our library is participating in this or not, but hopefully we can find one in El Dorado Hills that would be convenient for our local residents down here. But either way, we'll get the word out.
I'll get them to you if I can find them. Because like I said, I rely heavily on Toys for Tots. What an amazing team that they have. So yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you again for your participation. Sorry it took so long to get to you this evening, but I really appreciate you hanging in there with us.
No, thank you.
Okay, let's move to fire report.
Yes, thank you. Mike Lilienthal with El Dorado Hills Fire Department. Just 3 key topics. I won't keep it too long. I know we've had a longer meeting, but residential burning is back open. The day after the big storm that we had, the residential burning was reopened. Kind of as a reminder, that's by permit only right now. And the burn permit process is slightly different this year. Normally you would go to the fire station so you could get a burn permit. Now it's all done online. There's a little training process you go through. You're certified for a year. You can find that information through our website or go to CAL FIRE here in the El Dorado County, and that's where you get a burn permit. So the process is back open. I'm already starting to see smoke in the air and people are starting to call them in. So just for information on that, but be safe when you do that process for sure. The second is just kind of a report on the big storm we had, the wettest day in over 100 years, somewhere over 7 inches, depending on where you're at in the county. The numbers varied quite a bit. We were very concerned about the mud and debris flow issue along with the county. The Emergency Operations Center was open. We actually did a request and received state funding to pre-position resources from really all over the state. We had a 16-person Oakland Swiftwater Rescue team here. We were worried about mud and debris flow and clogging up of the waterways. They were here in El Dorado Hills at the Holiday Inn staged and ready to go and deploy for anywhere in our county. We also had upstaffing in Grizzly Flats in the burn area and along Highway 50. So that was good support, and the funding came from the state. So that was a great resource provided to our county, funded through the state to have those resources here. Locally in El Dorado Hills, it was very busy. We had 2 fires attributed to the floods. We had a mobile home fire down in the Sunset Mobile Home Park, and we also had a house fire in Serrano, both attributed to electrical type of issues with the flooding, and something like 45 to 50 calls related to flooding in houses. As the day moved on, the impacts were heavily felt in Cameron Park and El Dorado Hills as the ground was so saturated. We had water coming through the walls of people's homes on the hillsides and substantial flooding inside all over Ridgeville, all over town. It was really a pretty remarkable, 6 hours as it really got later in the day. So everyone did a great job. The community remained protected. The engines were running and very busy, but definitely some damage done. But overall, I'd say it was relatively successful in that there were no major issues from that storm. And then lastly was the Santa Run, December 7th to 11th. We're very excited. Food and toy drive is the purpose of that Santa Run. It's for fun as well, but it's also really to collect food. And we donate that locally to El Dorado County. And then the toy drive is very important to us too. So we're looking forward to bringing those events back.
Thank you. And I think an annual thing with Thanksgiving coming up and stuff, since we don't have a meeting between now and then, is the deep fried turkey thing and the peanut oil. And be very careful if you haven't properly prepared yourself for that, because it seems like every year there's a report of somebody having severe burns because they don't understand how that peanut oil can jump all over them real quick if they have the flames too hot, et cetera. So if you're going to do a deep fried turkey, proceed with caution and make sure you have the right equipment.
The right equipment, make sure you have a fire extinguisher nearby, but really watch out for the frozen aspect. Because, you know, with water and oil, that frozen ice becomes very dangerous. Excuse me. And then that's a very, very dangerous. Also, overflowing your oil, getting into the flames is an instant fireball. So we do have literature on our website you're welcome to look at. You can Google and watch the videos, but be very careful with that.
And do not do it in your garage.
That's experience talk.
Do it outdoors somewhere. If the oil spills, it's not going to cause a fire, right? So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Michael, for that. So let's go ahead and go through the sequence here. Economic development. Glenn, you're up.
Okay, let's see. I do have a few notes. I did want to talk a little bit about CDAC. We tend to get into short-term and long-term projects. Example of something short-term. Also, the projects, before I say that, often come from members of the committee based upon what they see in the community, what they hear. Also, the Board of Supervisors can ask us to work on something, and we did just finish a review of industrial hemp. CDAC worked separately and then came together with the Ag Commission, and an analysis and recommendation was sent to the board for them to hopefully move forward with a pilot program that would lead to a ordinance for allowing the growth of industrial hemp. A lot of other counties currently have programs. It's kind of emerging, something new. Probably will not be a very big cash crop for the county, but there's a right to farm and there's people who want to do it. Example of something long-term, how do we keep 18 to 35-year-olds in the county? Typically, after they graduate high school, we don't have much continuing education beyond that in the county. We have some junior college aspects. We have a satellite campus of Folsom Lake, and South Lake Tahoe actually has a pretty good community college up there.
Actually,
and they also
have
a
college,
link to a 4-year that they can do. They started about 2 years ago. So South Lake Tahoe has the best resources for kids after they graduate. And there aren't a lot of other training apprentice programs for trades that would be things other than college. So we're continually trying to find ways. And one of the things we've seen is that these kids often come back when they hit around 35 or 40. And there's, raising a family, they've moved along with their career. So they have career challenges here for young people. We have housing challenges for young people. We do see them come back, but how can we try to keep them here? So that's kind of an ongoing longer term project that we look at that involves all sorts of quality life things, even potentially the fairgrounds that we're hoping to have a conversation with, to kind of see if there's a willingness to work with us to help them develop maybe a foundation for their future, looking out 10 and 20 years. They tend to, I think, look a little short term from what I understand. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Another project, don't know if it's a bigger project or not. A couple of years ago, CDAC worked on a project for community choice electricity, allowing local communities to buy their own. And we did a review, a recommendation to the board. They adopted it about a year ago. I think it's about 13, 14 months ago. Pioneer Community Energy, which is a community choice aggregator in Placer County, contacted El Dorado County to see if they wanted to join up. And they're also looking at some other counties, potentially joining them as well to become, a pretty good size. And the bigger they are, the better prices they can pay for electricity, because they will acquire the electricity, but it is still distributed by PG&E, it's still billed by PG&E. Expected savings for an average residence are about $95 a year. So it's not huge, but it's a little bit of savings. Commercial's about double, and I think ag's about triple or 4 times that in savings. And then if you multiply that number by all of the ratepayers in the county, it's millions of dollars that would stay in the county. So not a tremendous amount of money, but it will save you money, and you will also have options to pay for compatible electricity versus maybe some more green energy if you wanted. They will have an alternative that'll be a little higher priced. It might take away your savings. It might even cost you a little bit of money if you wanted to pay for a greener source of energy, reusable energy. So you'll get all that information. They're holding community meetings. There's one tomorrow in Placerville, I think at your headquarters. You will also be receiving things in the mail as well. Every ratepayer will automatically be in this program unless you decide to opt out, and you'll have plenty of opportunities to opt out if you decide you don't want to participate. If you opt out and go back to PG&E asks that you will stay with them for at least a year before you decided to switch back to Pioneer. So my personal recommendation to everybody is to give it a try. It's absolutely painless to you. You will not see any changes except the line item on your PG&E bill that shows the electricity being provided to your home will be coming from Pioneer, and it should be at a savings or will be at a savings. And they also have a community advisory committee that I was selected to be on. I believe there's 11 members from El Dorado County and Placer County. I think 3 or 4 of us from El Dorado Hills. Our first meeting is next Tuesday by Zoom, so we're just getting started and don't really know too much about it. I think they're going to give us some guidance and ask us to help with programs that can help benefit the community. So I'll have more information about that as well moving forward. So that's my update, unless people have any questions. Yes, sir.
With the solar power to our home, we have a PG&E connection fee. Would there be another one with the Pioneer? So we'd have 2 connection fees?
No, from my understanding, I don't know the exact details of it, and I don't have solar on my home, but from my understanding, there are additional savings beyond what you may get through PG&E for the, your solar energy going back to them, I guess, that you will have some savings or a higher rate for that. So there's a benefit for solar customers as well.
There's a specific section on Pioneer's website that talks about frequently asked questions. What about my solar system? And they give you some very specific answers, which it's pretty much transparent for you. It shifts over. You don't have to worry about the PG&E contract. All those things are worked out, but you ought to read the material and make your own independent decision of how you want to go with it. But they've tried to make sure that people understand the fact that you have solar and you had a contract with PG&E doesn't preclude you from becoming part of Pioneer. So, and in fact, there's no disadvantages of anything I've seen other than you may like PG&E for some reason and you want to stay with them. That's perfectly your choice. So
yeah, so everybody's switching over. You can switch back. I know PG&E retirees want to switch back to help with
right. The default is you'll go into Pioneer. Unless you stand up and say, I want to stay with PG&E, the default is you become part of Pioneer. But as Glenn mentioned, first billing cycle, you can get back out if you want. Monthly basis, you can get out. You go to PG&E, you got to stay with them for a year before you can opt back should you choose to go back to Pioneer. So, yeah.
And there's some issues, some give and take between the 2 entities and exit fees, some other things. It's all managed by the PUC. It's not something that's just being done out on our own. Pioneer purchases electricity. They've made agreements with EID to purchase electricity from EID. They have the ability to potentially create their own sources for generating electricity. So we might see some solar, some wind, some reusable.
Some biomass, we're talking about that.
Biomass is another thing, especially we have a lot of biomass in the forest right now. That's also being looked at, discussed by an ad hoc committee on CDAC as well as other places within the county. So it just gives us a lot more flexibility and options right now. Much of the state has switched. We're a little late to the party, but we're joining. And I think you'll see a couple of other area counties also join Pioneer along the coast from San Diego all the way up, past Marin. There's been a lot of CCA activity for quite a few years, and I think Pioneer is in their 3rd or 4th year.
3rd year.
So they have the experience too. So we don't have to start our own. We get to join them, and it's going to be very easy for us. They put in the work.
Any other questions or comments on anything that Glenn spoke to in economic development? Seeing none, let's move on to infrastructure.
On the agenda here, it talks about El Dorado Hills 52 Costco project. I met with Supervisor Heidel last week with the applicant to just go over some, key components of the project and traffic circulation is a big item. The take back from that meeting was that the applicant is still considering some potential options on site for their portion of it, which is north of Silva Valley. And we talked through some issues and concerns as it relates to the traffic. With the potential of connecting up to the Serrano project that we mentioned, as well as down through central El Dorado Hills. And so we kicked around some different ideas and so forth which would lead us to a greater discussion that we're going to have here in the next week or so, Supervisor Heidel, with some
Schedule
other.
it, yeah, I think we're still trying to find a location, so.
With some
yeah.
other, the different department heads and staff to really vet out what are the potential options here for consideration. So a lot of moving parts, to say the least. But I think we've received some great feedback, in particular from the transportation department. And we've had various meetings, Supervisor Heidel and I have with Rafael Martinez concerning that. And so it's early on in the process, but like I said, it's a pretty complex issue. And so we've got a lot of things to consider. And so, but we're making progress. And so I don't know if you need me to address anything.
Anything else if you want to from the, planning commission? It's pertinent to El Dorado Hills. We don't need to talk about Dorado or anything else, but Dorado Oaks.
Other than I ask on a regular basis, when can we get Central El Dorado Hills back to commission? And I'm shooting for, early next year. I'm really shooting for January. We certainly don't want to bring it back during the holidays. And so I would say the earliest we're going to see it is in January. And that's what I'm pushing for. So that's the only major thing that I can recall, unless there's anything else you can remember at this point. So,
Discussions have started and there's needs to be more discussions, but
yeah, we got a lot to
Yeah.
cover concerning that project. So, but, all right. Any
questions about infrastructure, what our planning commission's been dealing with in El Dorado Hills lately? Seeing none, let's keep going. Good governance. Richard.
I presume your meeting tomorrow will probably touch on OES, FEMA, and all of that funding, so.
Briefly, yes.
And I have no unique knowledge, so.
Okay.
just let that.
So let me share with you that I was very pleased to see a letter put together by the director of Cal OES. It was about a 10-page letter that included a lot of statistics where they were actually making an appeal to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Assistance for Caldor Fire, individual assistance for individual property owners. And they made some pretty compelling arguments, and they did quote some similar incidences in California where that individual assistance was given to residents wherein the actual fire loss was less than what we had with Caldor. So I'm hoping that makes some impressions, that it sticks with them. And then in addition to that Cal OES appeal letter, which it's a public record if anybody wants to read through it, but I thought it was pretty well prepared. They had a lot of statistics and they spent quite a bit of time gathering it. The other was that we have a letter of support from both of our federal senators from the state of California, Dianne Feinstein and Alex Padilla, in support of getting that individual assistance through FEMA. So I think, from the Board of Supervisors and everything else, we've done everything we can, including sending a letter to the president himself, since he came out and did a visit, asking him to override FEMA's recommendation if necessary to give us that individual support. individual assistance for the residents who lost everything or almost everything in the Caldor fire. There are differences in statistics. If you go through, look at the Cal OES numbers, I think you end up with about 1,003 structures lost. And if you, well, actually that was U.S. Forestry Service numbers. If you look at the Cal OES letter, it has 750 structures that were lost. So there's a substantial difference, and there is an explanation for that that's been given. I want to make sure we get it verified before we make that public, but I think we've been able to sort out why there's a difference in the interpretation of the number of structures lost. So we'll share that at a later time when we get a verification on it. But those are the important deciding factors that FEMA uses, evidently. So hopefully we will get the proper response, and if not, hopefully our president will override FEMA's recommendation and establish the individual assistance for our residents who lost so much in that fire. So more to come on that later. Any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, then let's go on to healthy communities. This is a similar thing that happened as a result of trying to figure out how do we bring something local that I think we can all agree on, despite all the divisiveness that's been going on in the community between political parties and the state and the federal government and everything else. What can we pick as a topic for discussion where we are making improvements at the county level of service? And the public ought to be aware of it, because we need everybody's help with this one. It's called mental illness and what happens with mental illnesses. So we have scheduled a special meeting of the community council on November 8th. And that was at 6 o'clock, right, Cindy? 6 p.m. It will be here in person, and it's also going to be via Zoom. And I'm going to put the agenda together tomorrow, since we had a discussion with most of the, or some of the participants. But it will start off with my introducing the purpose for the meeting, to try to make sure people are aware of the severity of mental illness that we've seen, particularly with COVID. The COVID impact has been huge. So we kind of start with that, and then we have commentaries from two different individuals who are going to probably do some storytelling about what they've heard as a consequence of COVID and other things with respect to mental illness locally. And then we're going to turn to our El Dorado Hills Oak Ridge High School youth commissioners. So two of the youth commissioners are going to be participating to share with us what the program is that Oak Ridge High School has had for, I think, 3 years running now, to look at how they reach out to their fellow students to improve the awareness. They put together an app. It's kind of an anonymous thing. Evidently, you can go in and say, you know, I saw somebody out there. They seem to be having a lot of problems. Somebody needs to help them. Those kinds of things. Because if we're not aware of it, ultimately what happens is you get to this point of crisis management, and then somebody's in the ER room or something worse, because there was no formal recognition of the need for treatment and help with mental illnesses. So that's the kind of the second part of the discussion. The third part is I've asked county staff, in this case, it's Nicole Abram Nguyen, who is our Director of Behavioral Health, to comment on the presentation that they recently made to the Board of Supervisors that shares with you the result of a consultant study looking at how our behavioral health, i.e. mental illness services, are provided today, comparisons with other counties, a plan or a set of recommendations that came from the consultant, and then what the implementation plan is within El Dorado County to improve those services, to get better connectivity and stuff. So the primary emphasis is on be aware of the fact that there's an increased level of mental illnesses being recognized across many spectrums and age groups. Seniors have had a lot of mental illness issues, I believe, stress, if nothing else, related to the fact that we had to close down our senior centers, and their social life has been severely impaired because of that, right? They don't have that regular connectivity with people, and sitting at home by yourself can't be very helpful. So it's all those kinds of things that enhance, create additional problems that with mental strength, mental character, that we're trying to move into some kind of an improvement relative to opening up the programs again or improving things. So this is just to open the dialogue and say, recognizing, and without getting into a lot of statistics, recognizing that we have major issues with mental illness. I mean, the standard statistics I heard is 1 out of every 5 people in the United States has a mental illness issue. All right, so how many people do we have in the room? Okay, at least two of us on average have some kind of an issue going on, right?
And if anybody want to talk, I'll.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to go there, but we could all probably acknowledge something that concerns us relative to that. But it's really just to start the dialogue. How do we help people in our community be healthier? And this is why it's the healthy communities aspect. What can we do to increase awareness, to improve the ability to contact resources, to get the services you need, and then the follow on? Because the primary thing we're trying to do is relieve the impacts at the hospitals, from crisis management at the hospital, and then also from our PERT team, which is a psychiatric group that the sheriff and our clinicians that have to go out on site and try to deal with those kinds of things. Early awareness, early treatment, early advisement, whatever it is, counseling, those kinds of things can make a difference. And that's what we're all trying to get everybody to recognize and step up the program a little bit, particularly since the numbers of people affected by mental illness seem to have increased substantially since COVID hit. So
Can I add a comment from
Yes.
the senior center?
Sure.
The senior center, I suggested, and they've been trying to work on some sessions. I'm not going to call them classes, but sessions where they have therapists available, being there is so much anxiety, especially anxiety and depression that's been going on. And they're ramping back up. They're trying to get events going back at the senior center. A lot of their events are tied to lunch, which they're not doing. So their attendance is down, but they're continuing to work towards that. They thought they had somebody, but that didn't work out. So they're going to continue to look at professional therapists to come in and do it and do it well. So we're seeing effort.
And at the county level, we just received another update from our Director of Health and Human Services, Don Simone, saying he's again reluctant to allow conjugal people and serving meals and stuff because he's really concerned about the continued spread of COVID. And that's the tough thing to deal with. These are very sensitive seniors for the most part in terms of comorbidities, just immune system weaknesses, whatever. And we don't want to see a major outbreak in the senior population in particular because we opened up the facilities too early. So it's this balancing thing. When do you make the shot that, okay, the risk is low enough now, we can reopen, versus the impact from mental stress and other things that happen when people can't socialize and have a personal part of their life that deals with other people as opposed to constrained with what you can do on your telephone. And people that might come visit you, because it's a very important social aspect for a lot of our seniors in El Dorado Hills and across the county. So hopefully we'll get to the point where we can open those facilities back up in Placerville. I do know the one in El Dorado Hills here, which is run by the CSD. That's the difference. The one here is run by our Community Services District. The one in Placerville is run by the county with Health and Human Services. So
And that's
a little
only the
different view.
front part of our senior center
Yes.
is open.
Because the back part of it is a senior daycare facility operation, which is run by the county. And that they have decided not to reopen yet, consistent with the information on what's going on in Placerville. We're just reluctant to do it now until things settle down a little bit more.
Well,
So
either way, though, as they open up, they will also have some mental health support, hopefully.
right, yeah, and that's the key, going back to the original topic. So with that, any questions or comments on that? Hopefully people will attend a week from today, right here again at 6 o'clock or via Zoom. APAC, John.
APAC. We are meeting next Wednesday here in this room, and also will be virtual via Zoom as we have been the last few months. Last month we had a discussion about how APAC reviews projects, and we had some great input from community members that have experience in helping to prepare EIRs, draft EIRs, and how the approval process works in many different, not just El Dorado County, but across the state. And it's a really dry topic, and as most of our topics are. And I was surprised. Within the first week, we had over 160 people watch the recorded video. So it's 2 hours of hot APAC talk. So if you'd like to check that out, it's
I
available.
wouldn't call it hot, but okay.
Well, settle down. But that is available, linked on our website. And so next Wednesday here in this room.
You want to maintain some integrity in this group.
Now, well, then I'll be virtual next time. But our meeting topics next week, we have CJ Freeland from El Dorado County the Housing Community Economic Development. She's going to have discussion of the El Dorado County Housing Element Update and some housing projects. The Housing Element Update was 2021, 2029, and it's a process that takes place every 8 years, if I'm remembering correctly. But CJ's got some information she's going to share with us on that. And then we are going to have Pioneer Community Energy here to discuss, and we've had them here at Community Council, but at APAC, we're going to have them come back just because this is a big sea change in the community, not just El Dorado Hills, but El Dorado County. And a lot of the questions like Ron had asked and that Glenn's very knowledgeable about it, hey, what's different? What are the rates? What are the options for maybe purchasing green power? How does it impact my solar agreement with PG&E? And so they're going to come and give a discussion real quick. And as we get more and more of these discussions in the community, more people think of questions like, oh yeah, what about my solar true-up? What about what's different? What's better? What's worse? So we're going to have them here for that. And then we have a couple of local project updates, real brief, just informational. And then we have our APAC officer election slate. And our election will be held in December. And we'll be selecting our officers for 2022.
Very good. Any questions on APAC, what they've been doing? Seeing none, let's go community information and outreach.
Okay, this weekend, this El Dorado Hills CSD is going to have their annual punt, pass, and kick competition. It's for kids, boys and girls, starting at 5 years old to 15, I believe. And they're going to have them in different age groups. And that'll be at Promontory Park from 8 to 11. And you do need to sign up for that. Also, starting in December 3rd, Cookies with Santa, El Dorado Hills CSD is going to have that again this year. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. at the CSD gym. Again, that you need to do pre-register for that. And December 4th, they're going to do Breakfast with Santa, again at the El Dorado Hills CSD gym. They're going to have two different time slots, one starting at 8 and the other one, I believe it was like 10. And that also will be at the CSD gym. And that's about it. There wasn't a whole lot going on.
Okay.
Until our next meeting, so.
All right.
And then if you want links to any of these events, they're on Supervisor Heidal's page.
Okay, any questions, comments on Cindy's report? Seeing none, let's keep going here at 7. Councilmember items, our next meeting is Monday, December the 6th, 2021, and that will again be at the same starting time that we had here. So 5 o'clock until we choose to change that. And we may want to have that discussion maybe when we get into next year and take a look at that part of it. But I think for now, we'll stay with 5 o'clock at least through the end of the year. Next month's guest speaker, we actually have 2 guest speakers, President-elect Irene Musio and Wendy Mae Davis will be speaking about the Assistance League of Sierra Foothills, which does a lot of good work with respect to, I think they're a 501 tax exempt nonprofit organization, and Cindy probably knows more about it than I do, but they will be sharing with us what the Assistance League does to help people in the Sierra Foothills area, and particularly El Dorado County. So if you're not familiar with the Assistance League, which I wasn't, I think it'd be good information to understand and recognize the good things that they're doing and how to support them in their efforts. So with that, unless there's any go backs from somebody.
Has there been any wrinkle with this new dialing of the 530 area code?
Not that I've heard.
Other than I got a message saying I had to do that.
Just like when we switched to 916.
Yeah, 916 was been a while.
You got daylight savings time Sunday.
Right, right. So for those of you who didn't read the newspaper, whatever, now like 916, you have to use a 10-digit. If you're dialing 530 area code, you can't just, if you're in 530, you can't just dial the 7 digits. You have to dial all 10. So
will all the website phone numbers be upgraded by the county in a prompt fashion?
Heard anything on that? Prompt? I think you said the keyword. Yeah, probably not. I don't know what the plan is. I've not heard that as a discussion item.
I wonder if that's a Google thing versus a local thing.
I don't know.
Well, 530 is more than El Dorado County.
It is. It is.
916 was seamless, so it worked a couple of years ago.
916 when I moved here, and they switched from the next.
After I got reminded about the 10 time, I got caught
It
on.
was us, but everything else worked.
Well, I had to change a lot of my directory numbers because they didn't have, the 916 on it. So you got to go in and adjust those things or remember to change. So it's always, change is
Well, it's like
difficult.
taking the letters off when you had to do that too.
Yeah, change is difficult for all of us, but some change is tougher than other things, right? The calendar year is always a tough thing, is you got to write 2022 here in another, 60 days. We'll be into that mode. So yeah, 61 days, whatever it is. All right, well, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It's currently 7:10. Thank you for all of you for hanging in with us. And this ran a little bit long, but we'll try to keep the December meeting shorter so we all can get out and celebrate whatever we have to do to get prepared for Christmas and what happens in that time frame. Yeah, but I'm talking about the next meeting, which is December 6th. That's after Thanksgiving. All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.